My name is Eliza, and I am 34 years old. I work as a graphic designer from home, and until 4 weeks ago, I thought I knew everything about my husband and our marriage. I was standing in the kitchen that morning, the first time I could hear again after a month of complete silence. My husband Derek was in the next room talking on the phone with his mother. My first instinct was to run and share the good news, but his words made me freeze. My heart stopped. Before we begin this story, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. If you have ever trusted someone completely only to discover they were not who you thought, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Have you ever wondered if sometimes not hearing is actually a blessing, but sometimes hearing the truth hurts more than silence ever could? Let us dive into what happened next. 8 years. That is how long Derek and I had been married when everything fell apart. We met at an art exhibition in Portland when we were both 26 years old. I remember that evening so clearly even now. The gallery was small, tucked away on a side street that most people walked past without noticing. I was there because I genuinely loved art. He was there, as he later confessed, because his buddy had canceled their plans and he had nothing else to do. Derek approached me while I was studying a watercolor painting of the Oregon coastline. He stood next to me for a full minute before speaking, and when he finally did, he said something like, "The blue in that wave looks like the color of my grandmother's carpet." I laughed so hard that the gallery owner gave us a stern look. That was Derek back then. Unpolished, genuine, funny in a way that caught you off guard. He was a junior sales representative at the time, fresh out of college and still figuring out his path. There was nothing impressive about his job title or his salary, but there was something magnetic about his energy. He pursued me with a persistence that felt flattering rather than overwhelming. Coffee dates turned into dinner dates. Dinner dates turned into weekend trips to the coast. Within 6 months, I knew I wanted to spend my life with him. He proposed after 2 years of dating, and the way he did it still makes me smile despite everything. Derek could not draw to save his life. His stick figures looked like abstract art gone wrong. But he spent 3 weeks secretly working on a painting for me. It was supposed to be the two of us standing under a tree, but honestly, it looked more like 2 potatoes leaning against a broccoli. At the bottom, in his messy handwriting, he had written, "Marry me," with a question mark. I said yes before he even finished his nervous speech. That painting hung in our bedroom for 8 years. I wonder if it is still there now. Our wedding was small and intimate, just close friends and family gathered in a vineyard outside Portland. My sister Megan was my maid of honor. Derek's mother, Patricia, sat in the front row, already wearing an expression I would later learn to recognize as perpetual disapproval, masked as politeness. The first 5 years of our marriage were genuinely happy. We moved to a small house in the suburbs of Seattle for Derek's job. I built my freelance graphic design business from our spare bedroom, slowly growing my client list through word of mouth and late nights perfecting every project. Derek climbed the corporate ladder faster than either of us expected, eventually becoming a regional sales manager with a corner office and a salary that made our early struggles feel like distant memories. We talked about children often in those early years. We both wanted them. We tried for 3 years without success, and each negative pregnancy test felt like a small funeral. We saw specialists. We tried treatments. Nothing worked. Eventually, we stopped talking about it as much, the topic becoming a wound neither of us wanted to keep touching. Looking back, I think that was when things started to shift, though. I did not recognize it at the time. Patricia became a more constant presence in our lives after her husband passed away 5 years ago. I felt genuinely sorry for her at first. Losing a spouse after 35 years of marriage must be devastating. I welcomed her into our home, encouraged Derek to call her more often, even drove 2 hours each way to bring her groceries when she said she was too tired to shop. But Patricia's grief seemed to transform into something else over time, something that looked a lot like entitlement and judgment. She had a key to our house which she used without warning. I would come downstairs in the morning to find her already in my kitchen, rearranging my cabinets because she felt her system was more efficient. She would comment on my cooking, my cleaning my clothes, always with that same tight smile that never reached her eyes. And then there were the comments about children. At first they were subtle. "What a shame this big house only has 2 people in it." Then less subtle. "You know, at your age, time is running out." And finally direct enough to sting. Derek deserves to be a father. Some women just are not meant for it, I suppose. I told Derek about these comments every single time, and every single time he gave me the same response. She does not mean anything by it. That is just how her generation talks. She loves you. I wanted to believe him, so I did. The changes in Derek started slowly enough that I could explain them away. About 3 years ago, he began working later hours. Business trips became more frequent, sometimes stretching into weekends. When he was home, he was often distracted, checking his phone constantly, excusing himself to take calls in another room. I told myself it was work pressure. His position demanded a lot. The economy was uncertain and his company was restructuring. Of course he was stressed. Of course he was distant. I decided to be a supportive wife, the kind who did not nag or complain. I cooked his favorite meals. I planned date nights that he attended with a smile that never quite reached his eyes. I wore the lingerie he used to love and pretended not to notice that his interest seemed forced. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones, in the hollow space that was growing between us in our bed each night. But I could not name it, could not point to any single moment and say, there, that is the problem. So I convinced myself I was being paranoid, insecure, ungrateful for the good life we had built. I wish I had trusted my instincts sooner. The accident happened on a Saturday afternoon in early October. The weather was unseasonably warm, and golden light streamed through the windows of my home studio. I was working on a branding project for a new client, a small bakery opening downtown. The work was meticulous, and I needed some reference materials I had stored in a box on the highest shelf. I should have asked Derek to get it down. He was somewhere in the house, probably in his office with the door closed as usual, but I did not want to bother him. That was the kind of wife I had become, always trying not to be a burden, not to ask for too much. The ladder was sturdy enough, or so I thought. I climbed to the third step and reached for the box. My fingers grazed the cardboard edge, and I stretched just a little bit further. The ladder shifted beneath me. I felt the sickening lurch of losing my balance, that split second of pure terror when you know you are falling and cannot stop it. My head struck the corner of my solid oak work desk. The pain was explosive, white-hot, and then everything went black. I do not know how long I was unconscious. It could have been seconds or minutes. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the floor, surrounded by scattered papers and design supplies. My head throbbed with a pain unlike anything I had experienced before. I felt nauseous, disoriented, like the world had tilted off its axis. And then I realized something was wrong. Deeply, terrifyingly wrong. I could see Derek's feet as he rushed into the room. I could see his mouth moving, his face twisted with concern. But I could not hear him. Nothing. Not his voice, not my own heartbeat, not the ringing that should have followed such a blow. Just silence. Complete and absolute. The emergency room was a blur of bright lights and moving mouths. Nurses and doctors spoke words I could not access, while Derek held my hand and tried to communicate through panicked scribbles on his phone screen. They ran tests, so many tests. CT scans, hearing evaluations, neurological examinations. Dr. Simmons was the specialist assigned to my case. He was a tall man with gray temples and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he delivered difficult news. He explained my condition through written notes, since I could not hear him. The trauma to my head had damaged the nerves responsible for my hearing. The condition might be temporary. Many patients recovered full hearing within weeks, but there was also a chance it could be permanent. Only time would tell. I remember reading those words on the paper he handed me. I remember the tears falling down my face, hot and unstoppable. 8 years of marriage, 3 years of infertility, and now this. It felt like the universe was systematically taking everything from me. Derek was wonderful in that moment. He held me close, his chest heaving with what I assumed were sobs. He wrote me promises on his phone. I will be here no matter what. We will get through this together. I love you. I clung to those words like a lifeline. The first week of my deafness was an exercise in adaptation. I learned to read lips faster than I thought possible, though I still missed more than I caught. Derek and I communicated primarily through text messages and handwritten notes, our conversations reduced to the essential. Patricia visited on the third day. She sat across from me in the living room, her face arranged in an expression of sympathy that did not quite match her eyes. She mouthed words slowly and exaggeratedly, as if I were a child or an idiot rather than simply someone who could not hear. I caught fragments. So sorry. Terrible. Poor thing. Derek translated for her, typing on his phone. Mom says she is praying for you. She hopes you recover soon. I nodded and tried to smile, but something in Patricia's gaze made me uneasy. It was not the warm concern of a mother-in-law worried about her daughter-in-law. It was something else, something that looked almost like satisfaction. I told myself I was imagining things. The trauma, the isolation, the fear, they were making me paranoid. Patricia had her flaws, but she would not be happy about my suffering. Right? As the days passed, I began to notice changes in Derek's behavior. Small things at first. He started taking phone calls in rooms far from where I was, even though I could not hear him anyway. Old habit, he typed when I asked. Just feels weird talking in front of you when you cannot hear. It made sense. Sort of. But it did not explain why he always returned from those calls with a strange look on his face. Distracted. Sometimes almost happy in a way that felt disconnected from our current situation. Patricia's visits became more frequent. She and Derek would sit together in the living room, their heads bent close, their lips moving rapidly in conversations I could not access. Whenever I entered the room, they would stop talking or change the subject to something bland and obvious. The loneliness was crushing. I had never felt so isolated in my own home. My world had become silent, and the two people who should have been my anchors seemed to be drifting further away, communicating in a language I could no longer access. I started spending more time in my studio, even though I could not work effectively. At least there I could pretend that my isolation was chosen rather than imposed. By the second week, I had developed a skill I never wanted. Since I could not hear, I learned to watch. Every glance, every gesture, every subtle shift in body language became data points I collected and analyzed obsessively. Derek smiled when he read certain text messages. Not the polite smile he wore around me these days, but a genuine smile, the kind that crinkled the corners of his eyes and made him look 10 years younger. The kind of smile he used to give me in the early days of our relationship. Now it was reserved for whoever was on the other end of those messages. When I asked who he was texting, he would quickly lock his phone and type his response to me. Just work stuff. A colleague asking about the quarterly reports. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. The alternative was too painful to contemplate. The discovery came by accident. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and Derek had jumped into the shower after his workout. He left his phone on the bathroom counter, and it buzzed with an incoming message just as I walked past the open door. The notification preview showed only a name and a fragment of text. The name was Kay. The message read, "I miss you. When can we meet?" My heart stopped, literally stopped for a moment before lurching back into a painful rhythm. My hands trembled as I stared at those words. Kay. Who was Kay? What did those words mean? There had to be an explanation. A colleague named Karen asking when they could meet for a work lunch. A client named Keith following up on a proposal. I reached for the phone, desperate for context, for clarity, for anything that would make those words innocent. But before I could touch it, Derek appeared in the doorway, a towel wrapped around his waist and water dripping from his hair. His eyes went to the phone, then to me, then back to the phone. He snatched it up with a speed that told me everything I did not want to know. He typed on his phone and showed me the screen. Private work stuff. Confidential client. Sorry, cannot share. I nodded. What else could I do? I had no proof of anything except a fragment of a message that could mean 100 different things. I was the wife who could not hear, who was already a burden, who had failed to give him children. Did I really want to add jealous and paranoid to that list? So I said nothing. But I started watching more carefully. Patricia came over almost every day now. She would let herself in without knocking her key turning in the lock, with a proprietary click that I could not hear, but somehow still felt. She and Derek would disappear into his office or huddle on the back patio, their conversations animated and secretive. One afternoon, I positioned myself near the kitchen window while Patricia stood on the patio making a phone call. She thought I was in my studio, and she did not know how much my lip reading had improved. I watched her mouth form words, catching fragments between the movements I could not decipher. Her, soon, deserves better. Finally. My blood ran cold. She was talking about me. I was certain of it. The her was me. The soon was something coming, and the deserves better could only mean one thing. I stood at that window until Patricia ended her call and went back inside to find Derek. I watched them embrace, briefly, watched her pat his cheek with maternal approval, watched him nod at whatever she said with an expression of determination. They were planning something, together, and whatever it was not going to be good for me. The third week was agony. I felt like a ghost in my own home, invisible and irrelevant. Derek and Patricia had stopped pretending to include me in their conversations. They would sit at the dinner table and talk openly, barely glancing in my direction, secure in the knowledge that I could not hear a word. I sat with them, eating food I could not taste, watching their mouths move in discussions that clearly involved me somehow. Derek would occasionally type something on his phone and show it to me. Mom is just talking about her garden. We were discussing holiday plans. Nothing important. But their faces told a different story. The way Patricia looked at me with barely concealed disdain. The way Derek avoided my eyes when he handed me his phone. The way they both seemed to be waiting for something. I video called my friend Lauren one evening when Derek was out and Patricia had finally gone home. Lauren and I had been close since college. She was a family lawyer now, sharp and protective in equal measure. She lived in San Francisco, too far for a casual visit, but close enough to see the pain on my face through the screen. "I cannot hear you," I typed in the chat function while we video called, "so I will write, and you can nod or shake your head." "Deal." She nodded, her face creased with concern. I typed out everything. The accident, the deafness, Derek's distance, the mysterious K, Patricia's constant presence, the feeling of being erased from my own life. Lauren's expression grew darker with each word she read. When I finished, she held up her phone to the camera. She had typed a response. "Trust your instincts. Something is wrong. Start documenting everything. And call me the second you can hear again." I nodded, tears streaming down my face. It was the first time anyone had validated what I was feeling instead of telling me I was overreacting. The morning of my 5th week of silence began like any other. I woke to the gray light of an overcast Seattle morning. Derek's side of the bed already cold and empty. He had been sleeping in the guest room for the past week, claiming he did not want to disturb me with his early morning movements. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, preparing myself for another day of isolation and suspicion. And then I heard it. A bird, singing outside my window. At first I thought I was dreaming. I had dreamed of sounds often during those 4 weeks, phantom noises my brain manufactured out of desperate longing. But this was different. This was real. I could hear the distinct notes, the warbling melody, the rustle of leaves as the bird shifted on its branch. I sat up slowly, my heart pounding. I could hear my heartbeat now, too, the rush of blood in my ears, the creak of the mattress beneath me. Sounds, real sounds. My hearing had returned. My first instinct was to run downstairs and tell Derek, to celebrate this miracle together, to finally emerge from the silent prison that had held me for 4 weeks. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, already imagining his face when he heard the news. And then I stopped. The memories of the past 4 weeks crashed over me like a wave. The secretive phone calls, the whispered conversations with Patricia, the mysterious K, the feeling of being erased, dismissed, planned around. My hearing had returned. But what would I hear if I did not tell anyone? It was a calculated decision, and I am not proud of the deception. But I was desperate. 4 weeks of silence had given me nothing but questions. Maybe a few days of secret listening would give me answers. So I composed my face into the same neutral expression I had worn for a month. I walked downstairs as if nothing had changed. Derek was in his home office with the door partially open, his voice drifting into the hallway, and for the first time in 4 weeks, I understood every word. His tone was soft, intimate, completely different from the distant politeness he used with me now. He was talking on the phone, and I positioned myself in the hallway, pretending to look for something in my purse. "You know I miss you too," he said. "Just a few more weeks, I promise. I already talked to Mom about the timeline." A pause while whoever was on the other end responded. "No, she does not suspect anything. How could she? She cannot hear a word I say." He laughed, actually laughed, as if my disability was a convenience rather than a tragedy. "I will see you Saturday. The usual place. I love you. I love you." 3 words I had not heard from him in months, spoken to someone else. My knees buckled. I caught myself against the wall, my hand pressed over my mouth to stifle the sob that threatened to escape. "I love you." He was saying "I love you" to someone who was not me. I retreated to the bathroom and locked the door before I lost control completely. I sat on the cold tile floor and cried silently, my body shaking with sobs I could not voice. 8 years of marriage. 8 years of believing I knew this man, trusted this man, built a life with this man. All of it was a lie. But I did not confront him. Not yet. Lauren had told me to document everything, so that is exactly what I would do. Over the next few days, I became a spy in my own home. I kept my phone hidden, but recording during Derek's calls. I positioned myself within earshot of his conversations while maintaining the fiction of my deafness. And I listened. The woman's name was Christy. She was 28 years old, a new hire in Derek's department who had started 6 months ago. I learned this from Derek's conversation with his friend Kevin, who apparently knew about the affair and found it exciting rather than shameful. "She is perfect," Derek told Kevin one evening while I sat in the next room supposedly watching television. I could not hear. "Young ambitious wants a family. Everything Eliza is not anymore." My stomach turned at the casual cruelty of his words. Everything Eliza is not anymore, as if my value as a human being was measured solely by my age and fertility. I found my opportunity to look at his phone when he fell asleep on the couch one Sunday afternoon. His device was unlocked, probably from a recent text exchange. I scrolled through his messages with trembling fingers. The conversation with Christy went back 6 months, flirty messages that progressed to explicit ones, photos I wish I could unsee, plans for weekend getaways disguised as work trips, and worst of all, discussions about their future together. Their future that had no room for me. "When are you getting divorced?" Christy had asked just last week. "Mom is helping me figure out the best approach," Derek had replied. "Probably next month. I am just waiting for the right moment. Your mom knows. She is the one who told me Eliza was not good enough years ago. Took me too long to listen. I screenshot everything, sent the images to my own email, deleted the evidence of my snooping, and returned his phone to exactly where it had been. I had what I needed. Now I had to figure out what to do with it." The conversation that shattered whatever was left of my heart happened on a Thursday afternoon. Patricia had arrived around noon, letting herself in as usual. I heard her and Derek exchange greetings in the kitchen, heard the clink of coffee cups being poured, heard the scrape of chairs as they settled at the table. I was in the living room supposedly reading a book. In reality, I was positioned close enough to the doorway to catch every word. "Have you decided yet?" Patricia asked. Her voice was businesslike, efficient, as if they were discussing a real estate transaction rather than the destruction of a marriage. "Yes, I will file next month after her follow-up appointment with the specialist." "Good. It does not matter what the results show anyway, right? Whether she can hear again or not, you deserve better than this." Derek's response made bile rise in my throat. "You are right. I should have listened to you years ago. You told me she was not the right one. I was just too stupid and in love to see it." Patricia made a dismissive sound. "Love fades, especially when there is no family to show for it. 8 years and no children. Some women simply cannot do what they are supposed to." I wanted to scream. I wanted to burst into that kitchen and tell her that infertility was not a character flaw, that my worth as a woman was not defined by my uterus, that she had no right to reduce me to a breeding failure. But I stayed silent. I needed to hear everything. "At least Christy is young and healthy," Patricia continued. "She can give you the family you deserve." Derek's voice took on a defensive edge. "I feel guilty sometimes. Eliza trusted me completely. Guilt is for people who have done something wrong. You are simply correcting a mistake. And she made it easy for you. Cannot work properly anymore. Cannot hear. What kind of life would you have had if you stayed? Playing nursemaid to a woman who cannot even give you children." "You are right," Derek said after a pause. "She is a burden now. I would just be taking care of her for the rest of my life. That is not what I signed up for." A burden. The word echoed in my mind, sharp as a blade. I was a burden to the man I had loved for a decade. Not a partner, not a wife, a burden to be discarded when I became inconvenient. And her share of the house, Patricia asked, ever practical. My lawyer says she is entitled to half, but I have been moving money into my personal account. By the time she realizes what is happening, there will not be much left in the joint account to split. Smart boy. Patricia's voice dripped with approval. I always knew you would make the right choice eventually. I could not listen anymore. I moved silently back to the couch, my book shaking in my trembling hands. Every word they had spoken played on repeat in my mind. Burden. Cannot do what she is supposed to. Not the right one. That night I lay in bed alone, staring at the darkness where the ceiling should be. The tears had dried up. Somewhere in those hours of crying, something had shifted inside me. I was not going to be a victim. I was not going to let them ambush me with divorce papers and depleted accounts and smug satisfaction. I was going to fight back, and I was going to win. The next morning, I called Lauren from my car, parked 3 blocks from my house to ensure Derek would not hear. I told you so would be appropriate right now, Lauren said when I finished explaining everything. But I am too angry on your behalf to be smug. Tell me exactly what he said about the money. I repeated Derek's comments about transferring funds to his personal account. Lauren's voice turned sharp and professional. That is dissipation of marital assets, illegal in most divorce proceedings. If he has been moving money to hide it from you, we can use that against him. What do I do? First, document everything. You already have the screenshots, which is good. Start recording conversations where it is legal to do one-party consent. Washington State allows that. Second, protect your own assets. Do you have any money he does not know about? I thought about my freelance income. Derek handled our joint finances, but I had always kept a small emergency fund in a separate account he did not monitor. It was not much, but it was something. Third, Lauren continued, get copies of all financial records, bank statements, tax returns, investment accounts, everything. Do it quietly. Fourth, find a good divorce lawyer in Seattle. I can recommend some. And fifth, do not let him know you can hear. Not yet. The longer he thinks you are oblivious, the more evidence you can gather. I spent the next week following Lauren's instructions to the letter. I photographed financial documents when Derek was at work. I recorded conversations between him and Patricia when they thought I could not hear. I discovered he had moved over $40,000 into a personal savings account I never knew existed. I found credit card statements showing hotel rooms booked on nights he claimed to be at conferences, expensive dinners for 2 jewelry purchases that had never been given to me. Each piece of evidence was another nail in the coffin of my marriage, another confirmation that the man I had loved was a stranger. I also took steps to protect myself. I opened a new bank account and began quietly transferring my freelance income there. I reached out to my former clients and let them know I would be available for projects again soon. I moved important documents, my passport, birth certificate, and Social Security card, to a safe deposit box my sister Megan helped me set up. And I went to my follow-up appointment with Dr. Simmons. He confirmed what I already knew. My hearing had fully recovered. The nerve damage had healed completely, and there was no medical reason I could not return to normal life. This is wonderful news, Dr. Simmons said, beaming. Your husband must be thrilled. I smiled in a way that I hope looked genuine. He will be. He will definitely be surprised. The doctor gave me a curious look but did not press further. He handed me the paperwork, confirming my recovery, and wished me well. I sat in my car in the parking garage for a long time after that appointment, holding the paper that certified me as officially not a burden anymore. Not that it would matter to Derek and Patricia. They had already decided what I was worth. Now it was time to show them they were wrong. The day I chose for my revelation was a week after my appointment. Derek had announced he was inviting Patricia over for dinner to discuss something important. He had typed this on his phone and shown it to me with a smile that did not reach his eyes. I knew exactly what they were planning. This was the moment Derek would tell me he wanted a divorce. He would do it with Patricia there for support 2 against 1, probably expecting me to cry and beg and make it easy for them. They had no idea what was coming. I spent that week making my final preparations. Lauren had connected me with an excellent divorce attorney in Seattle, who had already reviewed my evidence and drafted the initial paperwork. Everything was ready. All I had to do was execute the plan. Patricia arrived at 6 o'clock sharp, her smile tight and anticipatory. She greeted me with exaggerated lip movements and a patronizing pat on the shoulder. Derek ushered her into the living room while I finished setting the table. Dinner was tense. Derek and Patricia carried on a conversation I was supposedly unable to hear, discussing mundane topics that I knew were just filler before the main event. I played my role perfectly, smiling and nodding when they looked at me, pretending to be the oblivious, disabled wife they thought I was. As the meal wound down, Derek cleared his throat and pulled out his phone. His expression was serious, rehearsed. He typed and showed me the screen. "Eliza, we need to talk about something important." I nodded, arranging my face into innocent curiosity. He glanced at Patricia, who gave him an encouraging nod. "Mom, you can say it," Derek said out loud, forgetting for a moment that he was supposed to be communicating with me through text. "She cannot hear anyway." Patricia smiled. "Go ahead, son. It is time." Derek took a deep breath and started to type on his phone. I decided I had waited long enough. "You do not need to type," I said clearly. "I can hear you perfectly." The silence that followed was the most satisfying sound I had ever experienced. Derek's face went pale. His phone slipped from his fingers and clattered onto the table. Patricia's mouth fell open, her carefully composed expression shattering into shock. You can hear," Derek stammered. "I have been able to hear for about 2 weeks now. I just chose not to tell you." I let my gaze move slowly from Derek to Patricia and back again. "I wanted to hear what you really thought about me when you did not think I was listening." Derek's face cycled through emotions: shock, confusion, fear, and finally a desperate attempt at damage control. "Eliza, whatever you think you heard, I heard everything, Derek. I heard you tell Kevin that Christy is everything I am not anymore. I heard you tell your mother that I am a burden. I heard you both laugh about how convenient my deafness was for your plans." Patricia found her voice. "Now listen here, young lady." "No." I cut her off with a firmness I did not know I possessed. "You do not get to speak. You have said quite enough when you thought I could not hear you. About how I cannot do what I am supposed to. About how Derek deserves better. About how you never liked me from the start." I turned to Derek. "And you? 8 years of marriage, and this is who you are, a man who cheats on his wife with a coworker half his age, who hides money to cheat me in the divorce, who lets his mother talk about me like I am defective merchandise." I did not give him a chance to respond. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder my lawyer had prepared. "Here is what is going to happen. I am filing for divorce. My lawyer already has copies of your text messages with Christy, including the ones where you discuss your timeline for leaving me. She also has records of the $43,000 you transferred to your personal account in the last 3 months, which is considered dissipation of marital assets and is illegal." Derek grabbed the edge of the table as if to steady himself. "How did you—" "I also have recordings of your conversations with your mother about me being a burden and about your plans to leave me with nothing. Washington is a one-party consent state, so every recording is admissible." Patricia's face had gone from pale to gray. She looked like she might be sick. I continued. "You wanted to blindside me with divorce papers. Congratulations. I beat you to it. My lawyer will be in contact with yours tomorrow. Based on the evidence I have, I expect to receive my full 50% of all marital assets, including the money you tried to hide." I stood up from the table, picking up the bag I had packed earlier and left by the door. This house was never really a home anyway. It was just a place where I was slowly disappearing. "I am done disappearing." Derek finally found his voice. "Eliza, please. We can talk about this. I made mistakes, but—" "Mistakes." I turned back to face him one last time. "Mistakes are forgetting an anniversary or leaving wet towels on the bed. You systematically betrayed me for 6 months while planning to leave me destitute. That is not a mistake. That is who you are." I looked at Patricia. "And you can finally have the daughter-in-law you always wanted. Someone who can do what she is supposed to. I hope Christy knows what she is getting into being married to a man like Derek with a mother-in-law like you." I did not wait for a response. I walked out of that house, my house, and did not look back. Megan was waiting in her car at the end of the driveway, just as we had planned. I climbed into the passenger seat, and she immediately pulled me into a fierce hug. "You did it," she said. I am so proud of you." Through the car window, I could see the house I had lived in for 5 years. The windows glowed with warm light, but there was nothing warm waiting for me inside anymore. Just a cheating husband, his enabling mother, and the wreckage of a marriage built on lies. "Take me home," I said to Megan. She looked confused. "But the house? That was never home. Take me somewhere else, anywhere else." She squeezed my hand and started the car. The house grew smaller in the side mirror until we turned a corner and it disappeared entirely. I felt something lift from my chest. Not happiness exactly, more like the absence of a weight I had not realized I was carrying. For the first time in months, maybe years, I could breathe. The weeks following my departure from that house were not easy. Healing never is. I stayed with Megan initially, sleeping in her guest room and crying more tears than I thought my body could hold. The grief came in waves, sometimes manageable and sometimes overwhelming. I was not just mourning the end of my marriage. I was mourning the future I thought I would have, the person I thought Derek was, the life I thought we were building together. Some nights I woke up reaching for someone who was not there. Some mornings I forgot just for a moment that everything had changed. Then reality would crash back in, and I would have to start the process of accepting it all over again. But gradually, so slowly, I almost did not notice at first, things began to shift. The divorce proceedings moved faster than I expected, largely because Derek had no defense against the evidence I had gathered. His lawyer advised him to settle rather than face a judge with screenshots of his affair and recordings of him conspiring with his mother to hide marital assets. In the end, I received my full 50% plus additional compensation for the money he had attempted to conceal. Patricia tried to call me once about a month after everything fell apart. I did not answer. She left a voicemail that I listened to only once before deleting. "Eliza, this is Patricia. I think there has been a misunderstanding. I never meant... I just want you to know that... Well, I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive. Forgive." As if 8 years of subtle undermining and one spectacularly cruel conversation could be erased with a single word. I deleted the voicemail and blocked her number. Forgiveness might come someday, but it would be for my own peace, not hers, and it was not something she could request or demand. I found an apartment in Portland, the city where Derek and I had met, where we had fallen in love, where he had proposed with that ridiculous painting. I chose it not out of nostalgia, but out of a desire to reclaim the place for myself. Portland was where my story with Derek began. Now it would be where my story without him continued. The apartment was small but bright, with big windows that let in the morning sun and a tiny balcony where I could drink my coffee and watch the city wake up. I decorated it with things I loved rather than things that would impress visitors. Bold colors and quirky art and plants that I had always wanted, but Derek had said were too messy. Work came back slowly at first, then faster as word spread that I was available again. My old clients returned and new ones followed. I discovered that my weeks of silence had changed how I approached design. I noticed details I had missed before, textures and patterns, and the way light fell on surfaces. My work became richer, more layered, more me. Lauren visited in the spring, flying up from San Francisco for a long weekend. We drank wine on my little balcony and talked until 3 a.m. about everything and nothing. "You know what I admire most about how you handled this?" She asked, her words slightly slurred from the wine. "My incredible legal strategy." She laughed. "Well, yes. But also the fact that you did not let it destroy you. Some people would have crumbled. You rebuilt." I thought about that for a long moment. I almost did crumble. There were days when I was not sure I could get out of bed, but I kept thinking about what they said about me, that I was a burden, that I could not do what I was supposed to, and I decided that the best revenge was proving them wrong. I joined a support group for people going through divorce, something I never would have considered before. There is a strange comfort in sitting in a circle with strangers who understand exactly what you are feeling, because they are feeling it too. We shared our stories, our fears, our small victories. I made friends there, real friends who had seen me at my lowest and did not judge. About a year after the divorce was finalized, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Derek and Christy had broken up. Apparently, she had started to see the same patterns that I had ignored for so long. The distance, the secrecy, the way his mother seemed to have more say in their relationship than she did. She left before they even made it to the altar. I expected to feel satisfaction at the news, vindication at least, but mostly I just felt tired. Tired of caring about Derek's life, tired of measuring my healing against his failures, tired of giving him any space at all in my head. Patricia got sick around the same time, something serious that required Derek to move back to her city to help care for her. I suppose there is a certain poetry in that. She spent years telling him that I would be a burden, and now she was the one who needed constant care. I do not wish her ill. I just no longer wish her anything at all. These days, my life looks nothing like I imagined it would 10 years ago. I am 35 years old, divorced, childless, and living alone in a small apartment in Portland. By Patricia's standards, I am a failure. But I have never been happier. I wake up every morning to the sound of birds outside my window, and I am grateful for every note. I build things with my hands and my mind, and people pay me well to do it. I have friends who know me fully and love me anyway. I have a sister who would drive through the night to be there for me. I have myself whole and unbroken, stronger than I knew I could be. Sometimes I think about those 4 weeks of silence, how terrifying they were, how isolating. At the time, I thought losing my hearing was the worst thing that could happen to me. Now I understand it was a gift. In the silence, I learned to pay attention. I learned to read between the lines, to trust my instincts, to see what I had been missing for years. If I had never lost my hearing, I might have stayed in that marriage for another decade, slowly shrinking until there was nothing left of me. The silence forced me to see clearly, and once I could hear again, I was finally ready to listen to the truth. If you are watching this, and you are in a relationship where you feel invisible, where your partner makes you feel like a burden rather than a blessing, I want you to know something. You deserve better. Not because you are perfect, because none of us are, but because you are a human being worthy of love and respect and partnership. Real partnership. Trust your instincts. They are usually right. Some of you might be wondering if I have found love again. The honest answer is that I am not looking for it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I spent so long defining myself by my relationship with Derek that I forgot who I was as just Eliza. I am still getting to know her again, and I like what I am discovering. Maybe love will find me someday. Maybe it will not. Either way, I know now that I will be okay. Better than okay. Because my happiness is no longer dependent on someone else's approval or affection. It comes from inside me, from a place they cannot touch or take away. I sit by my window sometimes in the evenings, watching the sun set over Portland, listening to the sounds of the city settling into night, traffic and laughter and music from a bar down the street. Ordinary sounds that I will never take for granted again. And I think about what Derek said that day, the words that broke my heart and set me free. She is a burden now. He was wrong. I was never a burden. I was a woman who loved too much and saw too little and stayed too long. But that woman does not exist anymore. The woman I am now has ears that work perfectly, and eyes that see clearly, and a heart that has been broken and mended and is stronger for it. The woman I am now is nobody's burden. She is her own person, finally and completely. And that is enough. That is more than enough. So I have to ask you, have you ever discovered something about someone you loved that completely changed how you saw them? Have you ever had to rebuild your life from the ground up? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. This channel is not just about my story, it is about all of ours. If this video resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories and know they are not alone. Subscribe if you want to hear more, and share this with someone who might need to hear it today. Sometimes the right words at the right moment can change everything. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being part of this community. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Trust your instincts. And remember that your worth is not determined by anyone else's opinion of you. You are enough, just as you are.